Let's talk about where teams get stuck when they're trying to align on big decisions, because it definitely happens. And it's usually not about the decision itself, it's about all the stuff around the decision. One of the biggest traps teams fall into is lack of clarity on the goal. It sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how often people are having totally different conversations without realizing it. Some folks are optimizing for speed, others are focusing on minimizing risk, and someone else is worried about how it's going to impact the customers long term. If the team isn't crystal clear on what they're solving for, what success looks like, it's almost impossible to get alignment. So great leaders pause the debate and get everyone on the same page about the objective before diving into the options. Another place teams get stuck: too many voices and no decision makers. Collaboration is great until it turns into decision making by committee. You've got a dozen people in the room, everyone has an opinion, which is fine, but nobody's sure who gets to make the final call. That's where things get messy. Effective teams are clear on roles, who's providing input, who's giving recommendations, and who's ultimately deciding. Otherwise, you'll end up circling forever and wasting a ton of time. And then there's the classic fear of making the wrong call, especially on big, high-stakes decisions. Teams get stuck in analysis paralysis. They want more data, more opinions, more scenarios. While thoughtful is important, there's a point where it becomes a way to avoid risk. Great leaders help teams balance risk and progress. They ask, what's the cost of waiting? And what's the worst that can happen if we move forward? Sometimes you have to make the best decision you can with what you know now, and be ready to pivot later if things change. Another hang-up? Unspoken agendas or misaligned priorities. This one's tricky because it's not always obvious. Someone's worried about their team's bandwidth. Someone else is thinking about how it'll affect their KPIs. But those concerns are valid. But if they're not brought to the surface, they show up as passive resistance or endless debate. Great leaders create space for those conversations early. They ask, what's important to you about this decision, and get everything on the table. That's how you move past turf wars and towards shared ownership. It's one thing to pick a direction, but if no one's clear on the next steps, who's doing what by when, that decision doesn't stick. Teams need a game plan that turns alignment into action. Without that, all you've got is a nice meeting and a bunch of follow-up emails that go nowhere. At the end of the day, alignment on big decisions isn't just about agreeing, it's about building trust, clarity, and momentum. When leaders create space where people feel heard, the goal is clear, and there's confidence in the process, teams move faster and make better decisions. And when they know they can course correct if needed, that's when real progress happens. Want to learn more? Follow the Transformation Unfiltered podcast. You can also reach us through LinkedIn or through our website,